Google's new Pixel phones are a symphony of delightful software, phenomenal cameras, and intelligent assistant features. But more important than the hardware or how it's put to work is the lack of any major flaws in this year's Pixel phones. That's not to say they're perfect, we'll get to why they're not perfect later in this review, but the top-down view of the Pixel 3 and Pixel 3 XL is of two truly outstanding handsets. Google created a pair of gadgets with excellent pocket-sized cameras and a bevy of AI-based goodies that just also happen to be really good smartphones. There's still a big Pixel and a small Pixel, and both are roughly the same physical size as last year's Pixel 2 and Pixel 2 XL, with a similar kind of design language. But take a closer look at the Pixel 3 range, however, and you'll see they are very different beasts. This year's Pixels have glass backs to allow for wireless charging, and consequently these phones have a very different feel compared to, well, pretty much anything else out there. Google has recreated its trademark two-tone design by laser etching a matte pattern into the single piece of Gorilla Glass 5 around the back, and it feels fantastic to hold. Most glass phones can attract finger grease with use and feel slimy and slippery after a while, not so with the Pixel 3 series. The black models I've been using have a very soft matte feel, the white and not pink versions feel a tiny bit more glossy but broadly the same. You've probably heard some comments by now on how scratch-prone this finish is going to be. All I can say is that for me personally, after only a few days, both of mine still look fine. Ultimately though, these are glass phones, and inevitably as time passes you are going to see scratches accumulate here and there. The glossy part of the glass now blends into the metal frame, which now has its own glossy paint job, so it feels just like a continuation of that back panel. The whole look and feel is simple but distinctive, it's all very Google. So let's talk displays. The Pixel 2 series was overshadowed by its screen issues. The smaller Pixel 2 had giant ugly bezels, the 2 XL had bad colours and poor viewing angles. So Google has put a lot of work into making sure both Pixel 3s have phenomenal OLED screens, and it shows. Colours are punchy but not oversaturated, whites are pristine, and shadow details aren't crushed at lower brightness levels like they were on the 2 XL. Daylight visibility across the board is decent, though perhaps not as searingly bright as the Galaxy Note 9's panel. Nevertheless, these are top-tier displays, and it's great to finally see that on a Pixel. On the 6.3-inch Pixel 3 XL, you've of course got that big ol' notch up top, which needs to be there to make room for stereo front-facing speakers and the dual selfie cameras. The smaller one has no notch, but instead sticks all this stuff up top in a larger bezel. I know some people hate the notch, but I mostly don't care at this point. Sure, the Pixel 3 XL's notch is larger than average, but it still blends into the background easily enough when you're using it every day. The taller screen of the 3 XL can sometimes make it harder to reach the very top of the screen, especially since there's no one-handed software mode. But hey, at least you do get the extremely useful option to swipe down on the fingerprint scanner to see the notification shade. Seriously, this should just be in every large phone. So Google's not jumping on board the Face Unlock bandwagon just yet, but Pixel Imprint is still here, and fingerprint security on these phones is still very fast and reliable. As for the speakers, looking at that notch around the front, they're significantly louder than last year's Pixels, but lacking some of the punch of LG's excellent boombox setup from the G7 and V40. The headphone jack still isn't coming back though, so it's USB-C or Bluetooth in terms of headphones. Google does include a pair of Pixel-branded USB-C headphones in the box. They're okay, I don't think they're anything special. They have this loop mechanism from the Pixel Buds, which I'm not a huge fan of, and also like the Pixel Buds, you can use the Google Assistant with these headphones to hear your notifications. These phones aren't really about the specs, but let's splash them up there anyway. It's all fairly predictable flagship level stuff based around the Snapdragon 845 platform. Base storage stays at 64 gigs, which is probably fine, especially as Pixel owners do get unlimited full-size photo storage through Google Photos. Still only 4 GB of RAM, which is a little harder to justify when the competition at this price is pushing 6 or 8. Most people won't notice a difference, but I have noticed apps redrawing a bit more often, particularly on the Pixel 3 XL, compared to the Note 9 and OnePlus 6. That's not the end of the world, but it is just a consequence of Google's hardware choices. But a Pixel phone is much more about the software than the hardware, and of course you get the latest Android 9 Pie with Google's great Pixel UI, and the promise of 3 years of fast platform updates right up to Android S in 2021. Good luck getting that kind of longevity out of anything released this year that's not an iPhone. The nuts and bolts of Android Pie haven't really changed since we saw it on Pixel phones earlier in the summer. Check out our Android Pie review for more on that. What the Pixel 3 series adds is tighter Google integration, 1 or 2 new features, and some very nice new live wallpapers. One uniquely googly feature is the new call screen capability, which lets Google answer suspected spam calls for you, giving you a transcript of what the other person is saying in real time. As well as being technically impressive and perhaps just a little bit creepy, if you're someone that gets a lot of spam calls, it could be really useful. Pixel 3 owners are also the first to get Gmail's Smart Compose feature, which uses machine learning to figure out what you want to say in an email before you've actually typed it. And there are also plenty of googly touches throughout the system UI. All the fun little animations that we know from Android Pie are here, along with some neat new animated backgrounds from Google. Each generation of Pixel brings its own exclusive live wallpapers, but this year Google's gone all out with a mix of 3D map views, rippling coastlines, views of distant worlds, or perhaps something closer to home. My favourites though are the abstract live wallpapers that start off as shapes on the always-on display and then bloom into view as the phone unlocks. Digital Wellbeing is now out of beta, letting Pixel 3 owners track their usage and set limits on how much they can use certain apps. Whether or not you're actually addicted to Twitter, it's fascinating to get a look at this information and see which apps are actually using most of your time. Again, we've got a full video on digital wellbeing for a deeper dive on that topic. Finally, Google has completely reworked its haptic motors to provide sharp, pleasing vibration nudges when tapping buttons and opening up menus. This is one of those things that you can't really show very well on video, but it's as close to the iPhone's Taptic engine as I've seen in any Android phone. Seriously, these are some great haptics, and all of this adds up to an Android experience that's just a joy to use. The Pixel 3s are the first Google phones in years to support wireless charging, and the fairly expensive Pixel Stand accessory unlocks some extra functionality for the Pixel phones. In one way, the Pixel Stand kinda turns your phone into a rudimentary smart display. You can set it to cycle through your favorite photos, see a summary of the weather or upcoming appointments through Google Assistant, or even have it slowly light up the screen to gently wake you in the minutes before your alarm. Whether all this stuff is really worth the fairly steep asking price is between you and your wallet, of course, but the good news is the Pixels also charge perfectly well on any Qi-compatible pad. Speaking of charging, it's worth going over battery life in general. Thanks to a reasonably sized 2950 mAh battery, the smaller Pixel 3 gets way better battery life than the Pixel 2 last year, while the ever so slight downgrade to 3430 mAh in the 3XL means that battery life in that model stays pretty much the same as it was on the 2XL. So what does that mean? Well, for the way I use a phone, I'm getting around 15 to 16 hours between charges, with around 4 to 4.5 hours of screen on time. Maybe closer to 4 on the smaller Pixel 3, closer to 4.5 on the 3XL. That's not as much as you'd get from a phone with a monster battery like the Note 9, and certainly not enough for multiple days per charge. But thanks to the efficient internals and Google's adaptive battery features, my Pixel 3 experience has been largely free from battery anxiety. So much of the Pixel 3 launch event focused on the cameras, and if you've used any of the earlier Pixels you'll know why. They've had some of the best cameras on a smartphone, thanks to Google's excellent HDR+ processing. On paper, the specs of the Pixel 3 cameras aren't all that different from the Pixel 2, but there are a lot of new tricks waiting to be discovered. The redesigned camera app makes it easier to switch between modes, including Google Lens, and the newly unlocked Pixel Visual Core, which is now used in all photos, means that photo processing is quicker than ever before on a Pixel. Plus, the new image sensor in the Pixel 3 can capture wider dynamic range than the one used in last year's Pixel 2. In case it needed to be said, this is a phenomenal camera. It's not a huge upgrade from the Pixel 2 in most situations, but that's more a testament to how good last year's Pixel camera still is. A Pixel can still pull out color detail that other phones miss, while boasting legendarily great performance in very bright or very dark scenes thanks to Google's HDR+. There's still a certain magic to the Pixel camera that's lacking from other phones. But okay, the biggest thing you might have noticed about the Pixel 3's rear camera is how there's just one of them. For 2018, that seems like a bit of a weird oversight, but Google has its own alternative for zoom shots, and in a very googly way, it's all down to very clever software. When you zoom with the new zoom controls, the Pixel 3 uses the movement of the sensor and the OIS module to resolve more detail than a straight-up digital zoom. The best thing about this is that it works regardless of lighting conditions, which is fantastic when you consider that most phones with a dedicated telephoto camera switch down to a digital crop of the main sensor anyway in lower light. In daylight though, well, often in brighter conditions you will get better results out of a phone with a dedicated telephoto lens compared to Google's Super Res Zoom. And there are a few little other nits to pick here. In particular, Super Res gets a bit confused about what to do with clouds in some situations. Nevertheless, it is impressive just how much detail it's possible to get from a single camera with a fixed focal length. And this feature also helps in Google's excellent portrait mode, which remains among the best out there. Plus, now Google Photos will let you adjust the level of blur in these shots after the fact. The new Top Shot capability works with the Motion Photos feature to record a bunch of frames both before and after you press the shutter. Once again, using Google's machine learning, if the Pixel camera identifies a better looking frame either side of when you actually press the shutter, it'll tell you and then let you process the better looking frame in all its HDR+ glory. I didn't actually run across Top Shot all that often, but it's one of those features you'll definitely appreciate when it crops up. So there might be only one camera around the back, but in fact both Pixel 3 models boast twin 8MP front cameras, one autofocus for tighter shots, and a fixed focus wide-angle lens for capturing more friends or more scenery. The Pixel 2 already had a great front camera, and so the extra versatility of the Pixel 3's twin selfie camera makes it even more competitive. It's yet another year when the Pixel is among the very best smartphone cameras. I do feel like Google oversold the whole super res zoom thing a little bit. These phones definitely could have benefited from a secondary telephoto lens, I think. Regardless, these are still awesome cameras. There's so much expectation around a new Pixel phone that it's impossible to avoid the question of whether it's the best Android phone at the time of launch. And to answer that, I'm gonna have to hedge a little bit. Yes, the Pixel 3 XL is an incredible phone, but it doesn't exist in a bubble and there's some stuff the competition does do better. Samsung has a brighter screen, Huawei gives you true telephoto zoom at up to 3 times and a significantly bigger battery, OnePlus has more storage and RAM, but what they can't match is the Google experience. The Pixel UI with Assistant, the 3 years of first-class software support. The Pixel 3 XL might not be the very best Android phone overall, but it has the best user experience by a country mile. In the case of the smaller Pixel 3, it's a much easier decision. Yep, this is the best small Android phone. Period. And probably will be until the Pixel 4 next year. Go right ahead and buy with confidence if that's what you want. But whichever Pixel you pick up, you'll be getting an outstanding flagship phone built around a magical camera experience, unmatched software quality, and for the first time in a Pixel, a top-tier display in both models. That's going to wrap up our review of the Pixel 3 and Pixel 3 XL. Check out our written review on the site for more, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.